invite Professor Ortt to the floor. We had a very interesting presentation on the first day, and now we'll have hopefully another interesting presentation today. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So, hi, let's continue. I would like to talk about theory. Why are we so busy always talking about theoretical perspectives? And more than that, why do we always have multiple perspectives in our fields? It's so fuzzy, it's so difficult. Why is this? Let me start with an anecdote to make the point. I work together with two former colleagues. And we do that now for more than 10 years, and we meet one day a month in Groningen, which is a university city in the north of the Netherlands. And I was there and I walked through the corridors with my friends, and then all of a sudden I saw a familiar face. And you know that feeling when you see somebody that you know, but you don't know who it is actually, but it's familiar. So I decided to stop. I waved to my friends, hey, I'll come later. Saw their faces, yeah. And went in the office and said, hey, I know you. And he turned out to be a mate that I was studying physics with more than 20 years ago. And he really was a brilliant physics student. He completed his bachelor and master in less than 4 years. He was the first one to finish in the cohort that I was in. And he also finished his PhD in less than 4 years. So he's really good, brilliant. So we sat down, we grabbed coffee. And I said, hey, interesting, I do find you back in the Department of Management and Economics. What happened? And then he looked at me, hey, what happened to you? He said, well, tell me. And so I asked him, what is your research about? And he started to discuss the topic. I don't even remember the topic anymore. But after a while, I got interested, and then I posed him the question, so what is your theoretical perspective? And all of a sudden I saw his face completely changing. He was, well, some despair, anger, a mixture of that. So I said, oops, raised the wrong question. And then he started to tell that he was gathering lots of data on the subject he was interested in all detail, and he was data mining it and exploring it in all different ways, finding all types of relationships, making articles out of that, sending it to journals, and then each time have a very eloquent rejection with the main notion, what is your theoretical perspective? It's missing almost completely. So, well, I felt like let's not go into this with him right on the spot in 5 minutes coffee. So I prepared a kind of an answer to him. 2 months later, when I was there again with the friends to incorporate, I walked past his office, and then I saw he wasn't working there anymore. But I prepared the answer anyway, so let me share that with you. So what we do have a brilliant physics scholar that has a problem with theories in social science. Now, I would have wished that I could have invited him in the talk that Scott gave. There you are. Because Scott was sort of explaining how or the Bell Labs and later on AT&T and the Baby Bells, how they evolved over time. And in making sense of that, especially about decisions whether they should split up the company or not, Scott showed that you can have at least 5 different social science perspectives to look at that issue, that topic. And he also showed that if you do that, you get different answers or different perspectives. Well, that would be a presentation that my old friend should have been benefiting from. Probably would have puzzled him even more, but it would be a good starting point. So, what's the point here? Why theory? Why all those perspectives? Well, this is a familiar picture. So, within this top says that if you start your PhD, you have usually some iterative processes circling around before you got a real proposal. And that was explained by this figure, saying that you need to take this all into account in a consistent way, which makes you end up in very many loops. Now, in this story, we focus on this one. Suppose now we go and look at the topic of innovation networks. And we focus on 3 questions. What are these networks? How do they evolve over time? And what is the result of that evolution over time? That's like the topic I would like to explore as an example how to deal with theory. And what I will start with, I will start with social network analysis and describe how they look at that issue, at these questions. And then I will continue to NiTiM 2 years back. There were 2 very interesting presentations. I would like to go back to that. We are a network. And I think it's very funny sometimes to have a look what was earlier on presented in the network. So I would like to refer to 2 presentations of Nathalie and Bernard about networks. Then I would like to go back to my friend in physics and make sense of why he had a problem with theory. And then I would like to continue with the presentation of Christina yesterday as an example, and then I will conclude. So that's the line of my talk. So, social network analysis. Simeon was eloquently stating that I'm not so mad about social network analysis. Now, if you translate that into my language, it means basically it's complete rubbish, but hey, you do state that much more eloquently. So what's the point? What you see here, you see different dots representing organizations. There's some coding apparently because there's colors, so there's apparently different types of organizations. There's different sizes, so might refer to the size of the companies, like turnover, number of employees, I don't know. And you see different types of relationships represented by the lines between the nodes. One interesting issue is, well, it's a nice picture, you can derive things from it, but the issue is what actually forms or creates the network. How does it evolve? What is the result of the network, the performance of the network? These things are not answered by this perspective. So what can be answered then? What can be answered if you use this as a perspective? It's like you can look at network centrality. I mean, you can give a number to each actor and say to what degree the actor is in the center of the network. Well, you see here there's almost 3 subgroups. So that's interesting. So if it's a market, there's apparently 3 subsystems of actors. What's also very interesting, you can look at the actors that connect different subsystems. They are referred to in social network analysis as structural holes. I think it's a wrong name because it's structural connection, not hole, but hey. So you see many different interesting characteristics, but they do not answer the issue, what are these networks actually, how are they formed, how do they evolve, and what is the result? So apparently we have to do something else, and maybe you should go with Simeon's statement, I'm not completely mad about social network analysis. So, let's go to what Nathalie and Bernard in 2 subsequent NiTiM meetings presented. I'm not going to do their presentation, I simply will list what I learned from both presentations. Now, Nathalie was having a huge data set that covered cooperation between organizations, but also detailed levels of departments, type of contracts, individuals involved, so it was like a huge data set. And she had the goal to explain the emergence and evolutions of networks. So, very close to the research questions that I chose. Very interesting issue is that since she already had the database, she had lots of data, but she had to still make up her mind about the theoretical perspective. So she was very much in the same starting position as my friend was. And she showed how she struggled with that. Her statements were, okay, social network analysis is not enough, you need to make sense of the relationships between the companies. And a very interesting thing is, if you want to do so, you have to go step down from the level of the company, go back to the level of the departments. So if you want to explain something, one way to do so is go one level, decompose to lower level phenomena. And she explained that she almost had to rewrite the article 3 or 4 times, adopting different theoretical perspectives, absorbing all the comments, and then finally, I think it took her 4 years or something to get the thing published. So the difference between Nathalie and my friend is that she had the same difficult starting position, but she struggled herself out of it. Bernard gave also a presentation a couple of months later, and what is very interesting, at least what I took from his presentation, is that why a network is such an important way to organize. And the point was that if you have an organizational structure, an institution, it's very difficult to change that very quickly. If you have a network, you can adapt it very quickly because you can break a connection and make another connection, and that's easier than reform an organization. And the interesting thing is that the strength of the network as a way to organize is exactly the aspect of the network that is not covered into social network analysis. So Bernard started to continue how to explain and describe these changes over time. And he also stressed the fact that you have to adopt a theoretical perspective. And that within that perspective, you should hook on a debate that fits into the journal. So, a very short summary of what I got from those 2 talks. Let's now go back to my friend. Why adopt a theoretical perspective at all? Suppose now I'm a researcher in physics, and both Gert and I were measuring the light speed. We did that at the same time. We made a report of that, we passed that. So what's the point there? Let's go to his field to find out what's going on. So here you see the installation to measure the speed of light. Basically, well, I won't go into details, anymore. But basically there's a laser bundle, and it has a very focused bundle. And that light then is on a turning mirror that is half reflecting and half the light can go through it. So what you see here is that there's an intensive narrow bundle. It's coming to a very quickly turning mirror. And then, because the part of the signal is because of the mirror, it's going this way, part is going through the turning mirror. Then you have a long track of mirrors where the signal goes and all the way back again. And then 2 of these signals are going to combine and they interfere. And because of the interferential pattern, you can derive the speed of light. Now, my measurement was 3.008 to 10 to the degree of 8 meters per second. I think that's correct, isn't it? Well, it's too much a little bit, but that was the measurement mistake. So the only thing I did theoretically in that report as a physicist is to explain why my measurement was higher than the theoretical speed of light. That was something I had to explain. That was the only thing I did theoretically, which was, by the way, a bit of an issue. Well, what does that mean? We measure the speed of light. Well, you might say that we have a practical problem. We all agree it's very important to know the speed of light. And major thing is how you design that installation to do it. So the approach is really, as an experimental physics scholar, is really an important thing. And then you analyze the data, there's some issue about the measurement mistake that I had, and then you have a result. So what you see here, at first sight, it seems as if the whole theoretical thing, which was in the picture before, is almost missing. Well, I don't think it is, but it's implicit. So there's two different theories about light in physics. Wave and particle theories. And you got the point. Implicitly, in this case, we use the wave theory because there is an interference pattern. Oh, look at your face, there's physics going from, so I'll keep on tracking this face what I'm doing well. So the point is that it's not true that that theoretical perspective block is completely missing. The point is that as a physics scholar, you don't have to look at that so much because you directly see, okay, this is a wave thing, we use wave theory, and that we use to make the approach. So it's almost implicit, you see, you directly go to the theory involved. There's only two, and it's an exception because in many fields of physics you don't have two, you just have one. So I don't want to criticize the physics scholars, I think it's very advanced work, but it's a different ballgame than we're doing. And in terms of this scheme, it's maybe a little bit simpler than that. And if you are an engineer, so you're not a scientist in physics, or suppose you are an engineer, you could also question why you want a theoretical perspective. Because you say, well, I have a very practical problem, and I'm going to solve this problem to save the world. Well, you try a solution because you engineer, you tickle around, you try something, you see what the result is, you evaluate that, you improve that, and you go over the cycle again and again. Very practical, and seems almost as if you block out the theoretical perspective. That's not true, because this way of working is something that's theoretically an approach. But hey, it's a different ballgame in a way, but close to us. And some of us use it. And that... Okay. Now let's now move on to the presentation of Christina. I sort of summarized in one slide what I got from that. I checked it with her, but hey, you can check, you can correct or compliment me if you want. So what we do have, it's not into the innovation network, but it's so related that we can take it as an example. We have a crisis, and then after a crisis, a network is formed in response to that crisis to solve the issues. And well, if you then look at social network analysis, you would make a picture of all the companies or actors involved, usually organizations if you use social network analysis, or individuals, and see the linkages. That would be very interesting, but it would not be enough. And now you see that Christina is taking a number of steps, which are very interesting, I think. It took me a while to really make, to got the point. First of all, she chooses a theoretical perspective. And that seems to imply that if you do that, that you work on a theory and test that, or work on a theory and do some extra on that. So it seems to be a deductive approach when you see theoretic perspective. I don't think that's true. Because what Christina did is she took a theoretical perspective, actor network theory, that helped her to go start observing what happened. So that means the theoretical perspective is not giving a model or a theory to her, but the instruments to go start observing what happened. So it's an inductive approach. Well, what is the principle of actor network theory? The principle is that both people, organizations, objects, laws, institutions cannot be actors. So actor is not a human being or an organization. And if you want to analyze the idea of Latour is that institution like a law or a home in a, like Christina showed, in a disaster situation can have a very important role. It might be a refugee type of situation where people are. So the home is an actor in the actor network theory. The home standing into the disaster area that Christina showed. Okay, now we have a perspective to look at it. And then still there's too much data, so we have to focus further. And what she does then, she says, yeah, I look at critical incident technique in a dynamic setting. Well, critical incident is derived from airplane cockpit design. And the issue was that pilots in combat situations, it was very important that you knew exactly how they would behave. So there was a higher chance that they would survive by having an economic situation around them that was so natural that they would do the right thing naturally and wouldn't be killed. That was done. So they found in that research critical movements or behavior that were important for flying the plane in a combat situation. That was then upgraded or changed or complemented by Flanagan in 1954. By the way, who says that all the research is not good? That was complemented and in a dynamic setting, and that was used by Christina, who then made a couple of steps. So what she was searching for, critical incidents that changed the evolution of the network after a crisis happened. So the first step was find those critical incidents. That was done by interviews with multiple actors in terms of human actors. Then around those critical incidents, a lot of information was searched. Events, process elements, what could have contributed to what happened, what changed the situation a little bit, what were the actors involved, what were the events, and all that information was stored enough. You saw the slide, color codes, number codes, and then the relationship between the elements that were coded were positioned in pictures, and from that you could derive network patterns. A very systematic way to make sense of data, and also do so in a focused way, and still be able to derive new theories, new patterns. Of course, it's very tempting to think of the next steps now. Well, can you say something about that?
The next step now, the derived categories for process could be to take these categories and to put them on huge masses of data, and which was not possible because this was, from my data, it was not possible because these data are theory generating, and our next step would be to use it in a quantitative way.
Yeah, you could think of simulations like system dynamics or agent-based modeling to make sense of the relationships that you found in the patterns, for example. So it's like a whole field that opens up. Now you have laid down the foundation. So let's go back now to my friend. Why adopt a theoretical perspective? Well, in social sciences, or in management sciences, but in social sciences in general, we attack problems with very specific characteristics, and it almost forces us to rely on theory. There's so many aspects involved that it's even not clear in the beginning what the variables are that we talk about. Even creating the variables is a huge task. So you see, if you look at emerging type of topics in our world, in our social scientific world, you see that it typically starts with case studies where you find the variables involved. But the issue is that cloud of all things happening is so complex that the choice to which variables you are going to, the choice of the variables you are going to look at is even something by itself. And that means you take a specific perspective, and that is your theoretical lens. So, why do we have multiple theoretical perspectives? It's something you see in the presentations of the PhDs, but also I myself usually have an issue with that. So what are the perspectives involved? Do I need to go through all of them? How do I select them? So let's move on to the second question. Why multiple perspectives? Well, it depends on the goal that you have. If you just want to know whether a company has a central position in the networks of an industry, you could choose to use social network analysis to analyze that, because you can use the central network centrality measure of social network analysis to assess that one particular company is completely in the middle. It would be shown also by the picture itself. But if you would like to explain emergence and the evolution of the network, and you would like to base that on existing theories, you could choose, for example, to use coalition theory or work on trust, for example. Or if you think there's nothing that's really helping you, then you can take the alley that Christina took, use actor network theory and build it up yourself. So it depends on the goal, that's one issue. What type of perspective you choose. It also depends on from which side you're looking at the issue. Bianca was having a talk on how different companies operate in an after disaster situation, and the question was how do they perform after a disaster happens, and how do they cooperate? And because she was focusing at first on companies, she took 4 different theoretical perspectives that say something about the ability of companies to cooperate. One of them being, for example, dynamic capabilities, which Simeon entered the storyline again. I'm not so mad about. That's interesting because Bianca herself then, at the end of her presentation, said, yeah, that's true, I have 4 perspectives, and I analyzed them, I went through the literature, I see what was lacking, I sort of found the gap, theoretically, excellent work, and then there was sort of a bit of an uncomfortable feeling at the end, which was, after the disaster, we would like to have the performance of the entire network, because if we measure that, we can distinguish the performance of the companies that might have a very good performance by destroying the ecosystem versus companies having a very good performance while helping the entire network. So that was an issue of from what perspective, company or network as a whole, you look at the issue. If you move that, all of a sudden there are new types of literatures that you have to look at, because if you look at the network, maybe you can use like business ecosystem as a literature, and then you look at the health of the business ecosystem, for example, but you could have other cases. Originally, my first shot would have been, how do you choose a theoretical perspective? Is by looking at the assumptions of the theory. So if you have a particular goal, let's say in economics, you want to say something about if you have a goal that you want to say something about unemployment in economics, you can use statistical data that's provided by all countries, and probably technological improvement is when you have a time span of 5 years is not used at all. If, on the other hand, you want to look at the increase of the gross national product, you have a completely different goal, and you can assume different things, and then all of a sudden, that approach doesn't work. So what you do is you match your assumptions with the goal that you choose. And another one was, we had that today also, that one of the candidates was having a brilliant idea for one of the other candidates, Daniel, sort of, suggested to Andreas that he could use a particular perspective, and I at least was very enthusiastic about the idea, and then all of a sudden I found out, yeah, but Andreas is not having the discipline to do that, so pity. So there's something like personal background preference also playing a role. Now this one is not complete, but just gives you an impression of what I think could be a line of reason to choose. Thanks.
such inspiring talks over and over again at each of the summer schools. Every time we meet, we always talk about what you've said to us the last time we met, and that's why I wanted to give you one of these and some a gift for that, and a second round of applause, please.